theme of the season has been tough to pass. Circuits in the GT3 series have been almost entirely tight and technical, with few offering much in the way of overtaking. While that might not sound exciting to some, what it has done is force drivers to be as mistake-free as possible, which is much easier said than done. We are only just recently beginning to see one driver pull ahead in the form of Lewis Goodway. Can he set himself up to be sitting pretty for the finale? Let's find out soon as we get ready to watch Round 9 of the PRL GT3 series. You'll see it all live here on the Global Sim Racing channel. I am Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is Adam Lindgren. Behind the scenes is our director, Sean Crackers Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Sonoma will be another circuit that tests both the qualifying prowess and the consistency of our drivers. Let's head to our track guide to look a little bit closer. Welcome to Sonoma Raceway, one of California's most famous road courses. It resides just north of San Francisco. It's been host to a wide variety of styles of racing, including sports cars, Indy cars, motorcycles, and even drag racing. But in recent decades, it's become most well known for holding one of NASCAR's rare road course weekends. For most tracks, this cornucopia would be a stretch, but considering the array of 5 different layouts to choose from, it's quite easy for the circuit to be adapted to any series needs. Most of the layouts clock in at around 2 to 2.5 miles in length and always feature an impressive amount of elevation change. This means many of the corners present the driver with a blind entry or apex. Some of these have a very distinct visual look, making them instantly recognizable. Corners such as the chute and the final hairpin feature street course-like walls surrounding the track, while the carousel is both picturesque and challenging. With few long straights, passing is often considered very difficult, but it rarely leaves races with a lack of action. Mistakes can be easy to make, offering opportunities for the brave. And it's not just the track itself which is tough. The pit entry's narrow path requires precise driving for those looking to make up time and leapfrog their competitors during stops. With more than 40 years of racing under its belt, Sonoma has become a staple for West Coast race fans. And what could be better than a glass of vino on a sunny hillside while the sound of engines echo around you? Well, with how the schedule has been this season, Adam, I have to imagine that the drivers are probably kind of used to this at this point.
Very much so, but Sonoma is going to be a little bit unique in road racing for its short length and relative lack of straightaways. See, this 2.53 mile or 4.07 kilometer 12-turn Californian circuit will be a fascinating course to tackle for these GT3 machines, who we seldom see come here. There are many great places to attempt to pass into turn 2, turn 4, through the carousel if you want to, into turn 7, and into the hairpin at the end of the course. The only real danger zones here are turns 3 and 3A across the start-finish line, and the S's at the back half of the course, as both places, well, all those places are very dangerous to attempt side by side. That being said, the only real straightaways being the short chute into turns 7 and 11. Trying to pass here will mean setting up for those passes as you exit a corner or two, and setting them up by setting up the corners beforehand and nailing that exit to make sure you're alongside your competitor by the time you reach the braking zone for the next turn. All in all, I'm excited to see how these drivers will tackle this legendary course, Joe.
I am as well, and as always, today's race is brought to you by SimMSA. Simulation Motorsports Affinity provides many consulting services, from completely customizing simulators to managing teams, individual drivers, and complete events. They're working hard to bring organizations, companies, manufacturers, teams, and drivers together at one place to support and promote sim racing internationally. They're also bridging virtual and real motorsports by providing a network between these two, involving sim racers, real drivers, teams, managers, engineers, and of course, motorsport fans alike. You can find out more about how you can get involved at SIMMSA.net.
The GT3 series is also brought to you by NinjaTrader. Ready to compete against the financial markets? Supporting over 60,000 users across the globe, NinjaTrader provides award-winning trading software and brokerage services. NinjaTrader is always free to use for advanced charting, backtesting, and trade simulation. Visit NinjaTrader.com to get started with a risk-free trading simulator and start tracking your performance.
Today's broadcast is also proudly sponsored by ButtKicker. ButtKicker products add an incredible immersion and realism to any game. Feel every nuance and truly put yourself in the driver's seat. Check them out at thebuttkicker.com. So the championship this season, as I mentioned, has Lewis Goodway starting to pull away a little bit. 20 points between himself and Julio Palacio. So it's getting to be do or die time, although they don't have a drop round in the final round. If Julio puts himself too far back, he's really got to hope for luck to be on his side in the finale to be able to do anything. But it's not over there. You can see it's a tight fight with 3 other drivers behind Julio. Diego and JR, as well as Dan Revito, all within 5 points of Julio for that second spot and potentially for the championship as well. You know, things could swing and change very drastically today, especially with how this track sometimes throws up some chaos of its own. Flores is a little bit too far back, unfortunately, at 58 points down, so I'm expecting him to really get into this. What about the team's championship thus far?
The team's championship actually looks pretty similar to our drivers' championship, just a little bit more spread out. SRT Esport Blue with a 57-point lead over SRT Esport Black. SimMSA Esports falling yet another position between last week and this week, down to 3rd position. Now just about 11 points back of SRT Esports Black. They led for quite a bit of the season, the first half actually, and now starting to fall back as the season wears on. SRT Esport Magenta and Orange quite a bit further back. They're still in contention between each other for that 4th spot, but they're not going to get up there to that top 3, Joe.
Now, for today's race in itself, we are in the penultimate round, as we've been talking about, and there's the different makes of cars, the GT3 models that you can run in this series. The race distance is going to be 40 minutes, and they do have a limited fuel cell compared to what the real cars have, so you can expect at least one scheduled pit stop to try and refill. They have some incident limits. You can see if they only get up to 11, which can happen very quickly, they get a drive-through, and then at 17, they'll actually be fully disqualified. Some bonus points are on hand, including what they're doing right now, which is qualifying. Pole position gets you that valuable 1 point, and Jorge Flores actually holds that right now, snatching it away from some of our rivals in the championship hunt. Now, for much of the warm-up, it did look like Goodway had things under control, and at the very end, suddenly, Macbeth came into it, and now, as I say this, Goodway just got up to the pole position.
Yes, that means I'm going to be keeping my eyes on Sean Macbeth and another one of the Audis as we look at Goodway, who just took that pole position. These Audis seem to have a real good feel on this particular circuit, at least during qualifying. They're really able to flick it in and out of these corners with great efficiency and great speed. It looks like the kind of snap loose tendency of the Audis actually helping them get off the corners with the speed that they're looking for. Lewis Goodway currently with pole. Sean Macbeth actually just went off track, so he's going to park it and restart his car, try and get another good run.
Now, the rivals that I talked about that are trying to get up to Goodway, J.R. Williams is down in 7th. Palacio, who's 2nd in the points, he's 16th right now, but he's only set 1 time. He must have had it off on the last lap. As we're looking at Lawson Christie and then Dan Revito. Revito, who's 5th in the points, is now 2nd on the timing sheets. That's a very good second lap for him. And only 3 100ths off of Goodway, so very, very tight. Let's see what Morales has.
Well, coming across the line, he's just starting his flying lap. This is going to be Palacio who's coming across now to try and complete one of his laps. Palacio crossing the line at 129.7. That does bump him up to 8th, but still quite a ways off of pole. And by quite a ways, less than a second, but about 8/10.
Yeah, but like we were talking about earlier, qualifying, I suspect that's going to be all critical to how this race goes, unless they get a big wreck or something early on to allow you to try and make up a lot of ground. That's Menino across the line. He doesn't improve, stays in 7th position.
Well, Joe, there is one thing I neglected to mention in my pre-race report about the track, and that's the fact that this track is just grass, and really dry grass, right around the track in every direction. There's only 2 places with runoff. That's turn 7 with the hairpin at the back end of the course, and then also turn 11 with the hairpin right towards the start-finish line. Those are the only places with runoff. Everywhere else has grass, and so you can expect that if these drivers clip that grass at all, they're going to lose time and lose positions just because of the nature of how mistake-prone this track can be.
This was Macbeth we were watching. He was on a slow lap, so that one not going to count for him, as Dan Revito with a 29 flat is just shy of his quickest. He'll keep going, and he's got time to try and improve. What about Morales? He's currently sitting in 5th as he crosses. It's a 29.9. That's about half a second shy of his fastest, so he's got to keep working at that. Palacio, there we go, a 29.3 will get him up to 5th. That'll move Diego down and put Julio that much closer to try and get into the game here in the championship.
Diego Morales with the pole position last week, and then having the doing the field calculations wrong, unfortunately, putting him back into the mid-pack of the field, had to regain positions all the way back up to 11th. Currently now in 6th position in the qualifying sheets. We're looking for him to try and jump up there towards the top as well as we look at Christopher Rhines. Here comes Arnaud Jeannot. Interesting story from last week, coming around to try and set a good time himself. Currently with a 130.2, crosses the line a 130.1, so about a 10th improvement.
Was watching Brett Thurman. Looked like he didn't go any quicker that time by. Neither did J.R. Williams. This is Strykars. And 14th place will stay as is, because that one did not count for him. What about Flores? As he comes down through, still a slow lap for him. Down to 4 minutes left to go. They're going to get fewer and fewer chances here. We're waiting on anybody to set a time. I see Andrew Benah yet to put one in, but he is not in the session, so I don't think he is going to be taking part today. Morales, a 28.9. That's going to put him onto the 2nd row and into 3rd spot.
Great lap from Morales for sure, as Palacio comes across and does not improve his time, unfortunately. Good way to see whether or not he can go faster. No, it's going to be a slower lap by about 2 seconds than his previous fastest. So quite a few drivers setting quick times here, but you can see just how many times are being scrubbed off the board from exceeding track limits here. It's definitely affecting these drivers' times.
0.16 of a second between 1st to 4th right now. All they need is tiny margins to get themselves up higher and potentially to pole position. Flanagan, as he crosses, looks like that's not going to be anything quicker for him. What about Genet? Currently sitting in 16th, and another lap that is discounted, unfortunately. Williams, man, he keeps getting bumped farther and farther down, and he responds now back up to 9th.
Yeah, that being said, Joe, it sure looks like the BMW drivers are struggling right now. The fastest BMW right now is J.R. Williams in 9th position, followed by Anthony Pisano in 10th. So the BMW, while it was really good for last race, doesn't look like it's serving to be very good at Sonoma here, at least during this qualifying session right now. But Sean Macbeth up to the top of the charts in his Audi.
Oh, so that lap wasn't a fluke in warm-up at 28.5, and that is a huge margin compared to what everybody behind him is doing. 0.3 of a second. Goodway's coming around to complete his lap. So let's see if he can make inroads at the very least on that. My goodness. Down into the timing line. A 28.7. That is quicker, but it's not going to put him up on the pole. He's still got 2.5 tenths to go.
Kenny Rodriguez trying to improve his starting position, trying to start up there in the top 10. Seems to be his goal for the season, but unfortunately, the car not coming to him. About 2 seconds off pace right now as he goes around.
I think the driver that might be panicking a bit right now is Julio Palacio, who is still down in 7th, and he's got 8 tenths to make up to our pole sitter. So this doesn't bode well for his championship hopes here.
As you can see up there on the top of the timing charts, 128.5 is the fastest lap, so about 1 minute 30 lap times. We're closing in on that amount of time in qualifying, so once we hit about 1:30, you can expect that those drivers will be on their final timed lap, the ones crossing the line at that time.
Brett Barrett down and across, not going to be able to improve. I see Goodway cycling around again. He's close to the end of the lap as he swings through the S's. That's Tremblay staying put in 9th as well. Genet no higher than P17. Neil Alexander around and out of the hairpin. Pisano also a little bit far down for what he typically does in 9th place. Let's see if Goodway can go any faster. He's coming to the line. He's got 2.5 tenths to make up. He does, but I don't think it's pole. It's a 28.6. And indeed, he still has 0.154 to make up to Sean McBeth, who is not going to take part in any more of this qualifying. He has parked it in the pits.
Rodriguez coming around, not improving his time. Let's see whether Palacio improves his. He does not improve it either. My goodness, these drivers are really struggling here. They're on their final flying laps now, Joe.
Another one of our bimmers, Flanagan, still not quicker than that 29.8, unfortunately. See Jared Williams following behind LeBlanc. Still down to 11th now, and not any quicker than that. Like you said, their final flying lap here. Who's going to be our first to shake the checkered flag? It might be Jean-Marc Tremblay. Barrett's going to sneak across just in time. Tremblay's coming down towards it. Will he be able to start this last one? It's very, very tight. I have no idea if that one...
made it.
No, he's slowing down. He's slowing, so he's not going to go on another flyer anyway. So Genet finishes, does not improve. Alexander abandons his lap. Lewis Goodway up next, looking for that pole position. He's improved a tenth at a time. The last 2 laps, he needs a 10th and a half on this one. Is it good enough? Down and across. It's a 28.4. That'll do it. Up to the pole by 3/100ths of a second at the last gasp.
Wow, what a great attempt from Goodway. Here comes Julio Palacio, who desperately needs to improve but can't get a good run off of the final corner. Let's see whether or not his time improves. But it's looking like it's going to be tight here. A 129.223 that is faster and moves him up 1 spot to 7th.
But that'll still be a tough day for Palacio. Seeing if we've got anybody else. Raymond Day is coming down. Man, what a difference a week makes. Raymond Day in 16th position. We're used to seeing him competing much, much higher than this. Let's see what he's got here as he crosses the line. 29.9. That's about a 10th quicker, but that will not improve his position, sadly.
That's going to leave Jeannot, and I believe he's on a slow lap, so that's going to be everybody, Joe.
Yep, he completed it last time through. This one won't count for him. That will set our order. Let's go through it. Lewis Goodway on the pole. He had to fight for it. Sean McBeth giving him a run for his money, starting second with Dan Revito in P3. Remember, Dan is 5th in the points currently and could challenge for that championship. Diego Morales is well fighting for the top spot, but he'll start 4th today. Jorge Flores in P5. You've got Brett Thurman to his outside starting 6th. Julio Palacio, a lot of cars to pass if he wants to try and take on Goodway in the finale. He'll start 7th. Jean-Marc Tremblay starting 8th with Anthony Pisano in P9. David Menino rounds out your top 10.
And Jared Williams all the way down in 11th position for his starting spot next to Christopher Rhines in that 6th row. Row 7 goes to David Flanagan and Tony Costello, with Kyle Stryker starting off in 15th next to Raymond Day in 16th. Arnaud Jeannot starts off 17th with Brett Barrett 18th. Then we have Kenny Rodriguez and Brian Hotham rounding out your top 20.
Neil Alexander will start in 21st with Lawson Christie in P22. Spencer Simkovich will be 23rd, followed by Barry Cochran in P24. James LeBlanc starts 25th. And then the last 2 to put times in, they're Ariel Salazar starting 26th and Sean Foes in 27th. As was mentioned, Benoit is not in the session. It looks like he's going to be a did not start today once they get going. Now, for those wondering about the championship, and since Goodway is leading by a decent margin, he could potentially take the championship today, but he has to outscore a number of drivers by a large margin, so we're not expecting that to be the case. Palacio, if he scores 17 points fewer than Goodway, he'll be mathematically eliminated. Williams and Morales, if they both score 16 fewer than Goodway, they will be eliminated. And Revito, if he scores 12 fewer than Goodway, he will be eliminated. Number of drivers who are just hoping to hold on potentially to give themselves a shot, because as we said, they do not have a drop week in the final round of the race to make sure that everybody shows up and attempts to win it legitimately. As we wait for the pace car to peel off here, this gives a good idea of what you were talking about with those danger zones, Adams, with the walls on either side at the start of the lap.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everywhere's a danger zone as far as the extension of the track is concerned. But that being said, there's plenty of place to race around here. The thing you have to be careful of is that crossing across the start-finish line is a really high-speed portion of the track, and those are pretty much like they're pretty acute angles when it comes to the walls jutting out into the track. So you're going to want to take those in a sweeping motion from outside to inside to the apex and back to the outside. That's going to put you really close to the inside wall. And if you run side by side, you lose a ton of time and run the risk of running into the outside or the inside wall, depending on where your line is. So you have to be very, very careful if you're going to run along here side by side. We've seen it done before, but the drivers have to be very aware of where each other are.
Actually coming up to here, which anybody who's watched some of the season finales of IndyCar over the past decade or so, into turn 2, that crest at the opening of the lap. I mean, what are your odds on us getting through there cleanly? They've been good at times in this series.
I mean, I think we'll get through here cleanly, but the question is whether we're going to see anybody just off track. I don't think anyone's going to run into one another, but I do think we're going to see someone outbrake themselves going into that turn, lock up the front brakes, and send it off and through that corner, because going through turn 2 is just so dangerous, especially considering the track falls away from you. So you really do have a tendency to lock up the tires, especially with cold tires off of a running start like this.
Well, that was odd. Sean McBeth maybe a little bit too wide down through the carousel and dipped his wheels into the dirt. He might want to get those scrubbed a little bit, start weaving so that he can clean them up. Here on the pace lap, you can see behind him the green and black car. That's Morales actually trying to get some heat into his tires. And now one of the few places to try and pass here through the hairpin of 7. Wide double apex. That offers some different lines, but I also feel like it offers up chances to get tangled up if you and your opponent aren't aware of where each other are.
Oh, absolutely. The driver in front is going to be taking a wide line to set themselves up for the S's, whereas if you're attacking them, you're probably going to try and take that short line and shortcut it. But if the guy behind you doesn't see you or just doesn't respect you, they're going to take that apex. They're going to take that apex up ahead of you, and that could cause an incident between the two of you. And with the way they've been penalizing this season, that could see with the penalty going into the final round, which is the last thing you want.
Absolutely, especially for our leaders. Hopefully, with the difficulty in passing, that won't mean some desperate moves that go punished at the end of the day. Pace car peels off into the pit entry. Give a watch on that, because that'll be a talking point throughout the race. Goodway, does he go now or does he wait? He goes. Goodway catches everybody sleeping as the green flag flies here for round 9 of the PRL GT3 series. McBeth up into second, covers off Ravito. Morales following them as they stream up the hill. That early start has spread them out. It is mostly single file into turn 2. Not much in the way of attacks or traffic jams.
Absolutely a great launch from Lewis Goodway, taking advantage of the way that iRacing officiates those starts, and doing so by jumping before the gun. We're seeing a move there from Jean-Marc Tremblay, from Anthony Pisano, trying to make his way past Jean-Marc Tremblay for 8th. Can't quite do so. Still not enough of a run yet to try and make a pass.
Pretty much every car running nose to tail. They come down onto the drag strip, but Goodway's not having it all his own way. Sean McBeth holding on as the pair of them start to distance themselves from the rest of the field, a little deep into the corner. There's the different lines you were talking about as Goodway chops back down.
Goodway doing an excellent job right now to try and hang on to that position. Sean McBeth, though, you can see how fast he is. Let's hope that that single lap pace can translate into race pace here for Sean McBeth, as they are taking off. But look at that, the battle for second, or the battle for third rather, very tight between Ravito and Morales. Morales is going to try and make that patch soon if he can.
Had to back off a little bit down through the S's. He shows himself in his mirrors, but then comes back to the racing line. Door slightly open for Flores behind him. Flores not able to take advantage, and we have our first wreck of the day. It's Raymond Day coming out of turn 10. He's found the inside wall, which is sort of bizarre, because almost always you see cars wrecked to the outside. Looks like we won't be getting a replay of that, sadly, but he has already taken a tow to the pits as we continue to follow the battle for third.
Yeah, battle for third, very tight here. Ravito starting to fall off the back of the guys ahead, about 1.3 seconds back. Those two guys up front really battling hard, but man, Flores is just diving it into these corners straight to the apex. Trouble says he can't get a very good exit, but here's Morales. We're on board with Flores now as he's chasing down Ravito and Morales. Morales, the green car up ahead in that Audi, trying to get through the corners, but look at this. Flores taking very different lines here.
Tied to the same coin potentially. I almost wonder if it's not Flores send it in deep, but Morales maybe trying to back up the corner, because you saw how he launched towards Ravito down towards the carousel. Didn't quite get the chance that he wanted, but maybe he's setting himself up to try and get the attack once they get to the braking zone.
That's absolutely the thing you're going to have to do if you're stuck behind a guy that you think you're faster than, is try and set up the corner so you get a good exit, because that's the only way you're going to be able to capitalize on a mistake that the driver makes ahead of you, because that's the only way you're going to be able to make a pass around here, is if they make a mistake in the braking zone. There you see the different lines as they enter the hairpin. Oh, look at this. Morales getting a good swap over. Is he going to try and make a pass on Ravito as they go through across the start finish line? No, he's going to stay in line.
A little bit of slipstream as they start to pick up speed, but then it's up the hill, and it is so tricky into this braking zone. He just washes out. Can't quite do it. As that was happening, we didn't see it on screen. Macbeth took a little bit of a look on Goodway into that hairpin as well. Now, he didn't get overlap with him, but he's trying to make him think, trying to rattle the leader, see if he can get anything away from him.
I love this track and the challenges it presents to the drivers. There's so many different ways to take this course. They're equally as quick, but the challenge is how do you make a pass around here? And usually it takes a late braking attempt and some sort of gutsy move to try and make a pass around this circuit. But now that they're using this carousel layout with the NASCAR circuit, these drivers are very hard pressed to try and make passes.
Stat for you as well. Our top two in the race are the only two this season to have more than one win. So Macbeth and Goodway currently up there at the front, trying to improve their stats even further as we watch our leader in the Audi. That's Goodway. You can see the orange and white machine coming through turn 10 down to the hard braking of the hairpin. But this time Macbeth nowhere near close enough to try and make something out of it. As behind them, Morales goes in a little bit hot. He went wide. I think he's going to be able to get away with it, though.
Yeah, I think Ravito just was very gentle into the corner. Morales saw an opportunity, tried to make it work. We've lost two more drivers, Brian Hoffman and Sean Foes, both self-spins, unfortunately, clipping that grass, going into the outside walls very hard. So unfortunately, they're both out of this race as well.
Point does Morales maybe get a little bit frustrated, especially watching the top two streak away from him. If he thinks he's fast enough to keep up with Goodway and Macbeth, then he's losing time lap after lap behind Dan Ravito as they come up through the carousel, down through the carousel technically. This is where you want that good exit. This is where Morales has been good, but he's not good enough once again. Just too many car lengths back.
He's going to have to make a move at some point if he, especially like you said, if he feels like he's being held up, he's going to have to make a really strong move on Ravito. And his best opportunity, it looks like, is going to be into the hairpin at the end of the course, turn 11. That's good. That's the place where he seems to be gaining the most time and be able to put on the brakes a lot better than Ravito. But I'm not sure he's close enough this lap to make that work.
Yeah, he's definitely going to need a little bit more than that to try and get the opportunity. The good news is for him that these three are stretching away from those behind them. Brett Thurman, Palacio, Tremblay have all been losing touch with 5th, 4th, and 3rd. Horrible news for Palacio, second place in the championship, as he's watching Goodway pull away and he's not been able to overtake the cars that he needs to overtake. It won't be enough points that the championship will be over, but again, it'll make it extremely difficult come the finale.
And there we see Palacio. He's about 5, now 6 seconds behind Lewis Goodway, who continues to pull away. Palacio just struggling on pace right now. Can't quite get to the back bumper of Thurman, who's now into this battle up ahead. I do think Ravito's starting to hold up these guys, Joe. Something's got to give.
You have to think so. Question is Diego going to be aggressive enough? Especially, well, I guess at this point for Diego, though he is in the championship, he's made so many mistakes.
Lewis Goodway blew the corner at 7. That gave an opportunity to Sean McBeth up ahead. Couldn't quite get to the apex faster than Goodway, but Goodway struggling a little bit on the braking there, locked up the fronts.
Some cracks in the armor. And Lewis Goodway showing that he is human. Sean McBeth probably watching, taking note, thinking if that happens again, he's not going to be able to get away with it for a second time. As they come down into the hairpin to complete yet another lap. Getting close to the pit window. Doubt we'll see anybody in. It is such a short lap, so hard to pass. It's almost going to be a death wish for a good race if you come in and pit early.
Absolutely, and we do have a side-by-side battle for 12th position between David Flanagan and Christopher Rhines. They actually make contact as they cross the start-finish line. These two guys battling tooth and nail, and Flanagan's going to hold that position. These two BMWs struggling right now.
Let's get a replay on this. This is where it all kicks off. Coming into the hairpin, Flanagan sees the chance for it, gets to the inside. Tries to get the launch off the corner, spins the tires just a little bit. He's going to have to finish the job here, and with a little elbow grease, he elbows his way past.
Yeah, some wheel-to-wheel contact, so there shouldn't be too much damage for either of those drivers. We go back live now. There's Flanagan snaking away, and Rhines falling back into the clutches of Strikeards and Costello behind him for that 13th position. So, a decent move from Flanagan. He also covered off Rhines, trying to tell him that he wasn't going to give the position back. Rhines just decided to go side by side with him across that apex of the corner. Couldn't quite do it, but we go back up to the lead, and it's very tight. Sean McBeth right on the rear bumper of Goodway as they head towards the hairpin.
2 tenths separating the pair, and they're coming up on some lap traffic. Sean Foes, but he sees it coming. He's going to let them through. Doesn't want to get involved in this. He speeds up, though. No, he's going to let a lot of cars by before he can get himself a gap, interestingly. Which might be a good call with how close everybody is fighting behind our leaders currently. We don't see them on screen. You'll see a flash of them there. Yeah, it's... oh, Diego Morales is in the wall. Morales just lost it in turn 2 when he winds up in the tire barrier. You can see him trying to return, and this is self-made error.
This seems to be the story of the season, unfortunately. Errors like this, lapses in judgment, keep seeming to afflict him this season. And there you see him hitting that outside wall. That left rear spoiler is going to be real affected here, and definitely affect his speed. He drops from 4th all the way down to 11th, Joe.
Well, maybe he will want to come in early then, depending on what kind of pace he can get that car up to. It certainly doesn't look good right now. So he takes it down the drag strip towards the hairpin, going up to our top 2. McBeth making sure that Goodway has to work hard for this one. Yeah, I thought I saw him dip into the grass there.
Yeah, that was Goodway dipping into the grass just a little bit. He's able to maintain it, but if we could ride on board with Sean McBeth, he's stringing this car out right now. He has got the thing set up loose, and he likes it that way. He seems to really enjoy how loose it is. He actually hits the outside wall just a little bit on the exit of the hairpin there as we ride on board with McBeth. Let's see how he handles 2. Because this is where things get really interesting in these Audis.
Up the hill, braking hard, down the gears. Gives you a sense of how blind it is through there as well. Takes it smooth, but so does Goodway.
Look at how calm he is in the car. I tell you, that car is swirling about. You can see it, just how squirrely it is. And he's just very deliberate with his wheel motions, not really wrestling the car around the track. I mean, this is a guy who understands how to make this car go fast.
Certainly looks like it. And with 2 wins for this season, I would say that Sean McBeth knows how to wheel a car. Ooh, he's awful close this time. Is it close enough? I don't know. They're going to break down into turn 7. Indeed, they'll just stay put in line. But once again, very different lines between the pair of them. That looks like it's compromising his exit, though. Would it help him to try and do more of the line that Goodway's doing? Get a little bit more of a diamond off effect?
I mean, sure, but the question is how is it? It depends on whether or not Sean McBeth feels comfortable following pretty blind through the S's, which is something that you can get a problem with if you get tucked up right behind somebody. And if you lose those that visual turn-in point, a lot of drivers do struggle with that. So, I mean, Sean McBeth might be good enough that he's not one that does, but it could be something that affects him. And in that case, he does have his car set up to rotate very well through the corners.
If we could jump back behind them, Revito, despite losing Diego Morales a little bit earlier, is now very much under threat from Flores, who made short work of closing that gap. And we don't need to go to it. I can report we had some contact between Strykars and Costello. That happened at the hairpin. Strykars punted into the barriers and falling down many spots. Look at that battle for third once again. Flores still keeping it tucked under the rear wing of the number 84. Look back from Revito. Picking up speed to 130, 135 miles an hour, and then they break down into the hairpin once more. A trio trying to sort out the last step on the podium.
Yeah, the Ferrari entering its element as we go through the S's here. The middle of the corner speed is where the Ferrari is definitely better than most cars. Well, look at this. Flores right on his rear bumper. He might have an opportunity into the carousel.
He's going to have a really good opportunity if he can withstand the wake of the car ahead. He's there. I just don't think he's there enough. And indeed, he can't get up next to him under braking. Vito holds him at bay, but he's got to do so for 26 more minutes and through a pit stop cycle.
Yeah, the pit stops are going to really define things here. I think we might see an undercut like we saw last race happen again, especially with some of these drivers that feel like they're being held up. I think Flores might be one of our first takers on the pit stops if he thinks that he can get a little bit of clean track, open up, and try and make some passes here. It looks like Kyle Strykars is going to take pit stop to deal with that damage that you mentioned, Joe.
Yeah, not surprised with how hard he got hit in the corner. He's probably going to have to get these repairs done just to get the car drivable again. Ooh, a little wide into the carousel, but Revito tucks it down to the curb very well. Oh, and off course, that is Flores. Is he going to lose his spot? Thurman might have an opportunity. No, just not quite close enough.
Oh, man, Thurman, I mean, that is the best opportunity you're going to get this race, man, to try and effect a pass, I think. That kind of mistake is the kind of thing you need to capitalize on, and he definitely had a window in towards the apex there. He could have dove it down there, but now he goes off track here. Oh boy, trying to hang on to it through the S's.
And that's the second time. He was actually off track at the same time that Flores was coming out of the carousel. And Julio Palacio is able to catch up because of that. Ooh, way deep into the corner, out into the marbles. Thurman, multiple mistakes. I think he's a little bit unsettled here. Palacio could have a good shot if he sees another little opening. He's close enough at this point.
Yeah, we're starting to hit that point where the tires are starting to hit a little bit of a development cliff. We have to go to the lead, though, because Lewis Goodway and Sean McBeth are almost side by side as they come into this corner. They're headed towards the carousel, and Sean McBeth has been right on the bumper of Goodway. Goodway starting to blanch a bit.
McBeth, I'm not sure how much that was an attempt and how much it was. McBeth sliding the car like he just did there, down into the carousel, four-wheel drift. And he lost only a little bit of time, but I can't imagine those tires feel very good now.
Yeah, but it depends on how well you can drive with the tires in that condition. There you can see the two different lines from Goodway and McBeth, as we mentioned before. That gives McBeth a good launch. Goodway a good launch into the S's, but McBeth seems to be able to gain the time back. So possibly with a little bit more downforce on McBeth's machine here as they come in towards the final set of corners here. You can see how much more speed McBeth carries through that final turn 10 into 11. Here we go one more time onto the hard braking. And Goodway, wow, you can see just how much more McBeth can rotate through the center of the corner, but Goodway with a good exit is able to clear him.
These two are now 5 seconds ahead of Dan Revito, back in the third position. You can see how far the gap is from our camera angles. Barely getting Dan Revito at any point into the picture. There's a really good sense of it right there.
And Joe, you were talking about how hard it is to pass around here. With the exception of Diego Morales having his spin, the top 10 have not changed positions at all since the start of this race.
Yeah, I've been keeping an eye on if we've had any big movers, and the short answer is no. There have been none. There have been people who have fallen, but very few who have climbed up too many spots. Macbeth just once won, and that would be the pole position that he lost out on in qualifying. A little bit defensive there for a moment from Goodway.
All right, so at this point, Macbeth's got to be thinking, this ain't working. I'm not able to get past him on raw pace alone. So he's got to be start to be thinking about the pit stop cycle. And for these two leaders, I think it's going to be the same situation as last week. They're going to have to wait until everybody else behind them pits. Otherwise, they could come out behind people and get trapped, considering how hard it is to pass around here. Sean Macbeth looking very strong, though, as we come back towards the hairpin. I don't think he's going to have an opportunity, though. He's as close as he's ever been. Did Goodway take it too deep?
We did a little bit, but doesn't seem like Macbeth is able to capitalize there. He still holds on to him. Could he do something into turn 2 if he's extremely brave? He's going to have to be very brave, but he's closing in. And no, he decides not to. Even still, he does seem to feel like it's go time. We're seeing more and more attempts and maybe a little bit more erratic driving from him.
Well, the interesting thing about Sonoma is that you can pass just about anywhere. It's just where can you get that momentum? Where can you get a pass where you can make it work and also make sure that the other driver doesn't run into you because he's not expecting you to make that pass. Here comes through the carousel one more time. This is where Macbeth seems to gain a little bit, but Goodway with a good exit could clear him, and it looks like he's got a good enough one. Is Macbeth going to try something here? Goodway looking like he's taking his normal line.
No attempt. Oh, but once again, like you said, mid-corner, it seems like Sean Macbeth has the superior car, but passing in the middle of the corner is almost impossible.
My question is, can he translate that into a late apex at the end of the final hairpin and translate that into a good exit onto the start-finish straight? Because that might be a way to effect a pass on Lewis Goodway. Closing into 20 minutes here, about halfway in this race. We haven't seen any pit stops yet, really, except for Kyle Stryker is in for damage, so things looking very interesting here. Macbeth with not the greatest exit off of the hairpin that time.
Jumping back from these two to third place, Ravito and Flores have made it just a two-car fight. Brett Thurman, with too many mistakes, is now 2 seconds back from Hare. We'll climb up the hill in a very similar situation to our leaders, unfortunately.
Yeah, Flores looking for an opportunity on Ravito. The difference here is that it sure looks like Flores has got that thing set up for like the S's and the medium speed corners, whereas Ravito seems to be a little bit better when we get to these sort of technical sections where they're a little bit slower, a little bit of the slower speed corners. So Flores, with the setup that he has like that, it's going to be really hard to find a way to pass. He's going to have to do it on the brakes into one of these sharp apexes. Oh man!
Oh, up to our leaders, because Macbeth actually did have a go at it, and Goodway was very defensive. They're going to go side by side, almost scraping doors against one another into the S's. There's just not enough momentum for Macbeth. That was the hardiest try we've seen from him yet.
Oh boy, this is going to make things interesting here between these two drivers. Goodway now is going to be feeling the pressure for sure from Macbeth. Macbeth looking like he's trying to set up for the hairpin, can't quite get there, but Macbeth's center corner speed is definitely proving to be real dangerous for Goodway.
So here's the question. Macbeth is 15th in the championship, whereas Goodway's leading. How hard should Goodway fight right here? Does he risk the car? Because right now, even if he finishes second place, he's ahead of all his rivals that he needs to be.
I mean, how do you tell a race car driver not to race, Joe? I mean, this is Lewis Goodway, the man leading the championship. He's leading for a reason, and that's because of his strong performances. I don't know if you're going to get him to back off. Sean Macbeth actually taking it too deep into that corner, gets a little bit tail happy on the brakes, has to back out of it just a little bit to reset the car. That's going to give Goodway the biggest breathing room he's had in laps.
Eagle-eyed viewers may have noticed that Neil Alexander has disappeared from the tower. That's because he got into an accident with Rodriguez and has since come into the pits and actually just finished up the few repairs. So Neil Alexander is going to join us once again. We still have 26 of our 27 starters running on what is a relatively short track.
Yeah, good way. Having pulled about a second over Macbeth as Macbeth was cooling off those rear tires that locked up a bit going into that turn at the top of the hill there. So he's had to back off that challenge a little bit and wait a bit more. Flores, on the other hand, still right on the back of Ravito here and trying to get him into the braking zones, but Ravito's consistency is making it hard for Flores to try and effect a pass.
An interesting thing to note about this battle, too, in comparison to Goodway and Macbeth. First and second is Audi versus Audi. This is Ferrari versus Audi. So two different makes of cars that certainly handle differently in separate sections, and also will probably treat their tires differently over the course of the stint. So something for the drivers to consider as things continue to play out.
Absolutely. The Ferrari tends to get a little bit tighter over the course of a run, whereas the Audi is the complete opposite. That thing gets so loose it's not even funny. And depending on your setup, it could be very edgy, but also very exciting, as we see Flores right behind Ravito, putting a ton of pressure on. If he get back off this exit of the carousel and get a good run, he might have an opportunity as they go into 7.
This time he keeps it on the black stuff. Flores is close. He could send one in if he wants to. He decides not quite yet. Too early for that risky of a maneuver. Past the halfway point, though, we should see drivers come in, I believe about 12 to 10 minutes to go is the farthest we should see them today.
I'm going to guess somewhere around the 13-minute mark is where we're going to see most drivers take the pit stops, unless people decide to take an undercut. In which case, that's where things could get interesting. Wow, you can see Flores, how much he's struggling through the S's now with the worn tires. Ravito and that Ferrari chassis, the way that particular mid-engine car flows through the corners is going to make things a lot easier. That's Sean Foes going past on the screen, just pulling over and letting these guys go. He's a couple laps down at this point.
Yeah, I think he's just trying to play polite, make sure that he doesn't interrupt any fights, and is able to finish the race cleanly. Up and over turn 2. Flores still stays within a couple tenths of Dan Ravito, attempting to get himself another podium.
Ravito, that Ferrari getting a little bit neutral over the crest of these hills, making it difficult for Ravito to get the power down. Flores not having such a problem with the way that car likes to sit on its rear wheels. Oh boy, Ravito a little bit wide through the carousel this time by. This might give an opportunity to Flores once again. This is the closest he's been, Joe.
He's within a car length, keeping him from getting the inside. Ravito stays defensive as they break into the hairpin. Shallower line means maybe momentum could go in favor of Flores. No, even though he swung wide, he's still stuck behind.
Yeah, and here's the strong part of the track for Ravito. So Ravito doing exactly what he needed to do. Even if he was a little bit slower through 7, it definitely worked out for him. Ravito now be able to pull that gap once again because Flores has to back off through the S's because he can't quite get the turn in he's looking for.
This might just go on all the way until the checkered flag. They come off of the hairpin. There is a car in, that's James LeBlanc. So another one of our back markers coming in for a stop.
We've had Kenny Rodriguez as well come in for his scheduled stop. Ariel Salazar's in for damage that he got doing a self-spin off track as well. So we've had 2 cars in for regular service at this point. Still with 14 minutes to go. I think we're going to start to see the dominoes fall soon, Joe.
Undoubtedly. Love all the elevation change that you get around this circuit as well. The cameras certainly give us a good idea of all the drops and climbs. Back to our leader here, and the number 74. Leader not just on the track, but in the points. That time a little bit wide, coming through the hairpin at 7. Beth actually does not close, though, so that line worked quite well for the 74.
Now he clipped the second apex of 7 there, and that's the trouble that Macbeth got into. So Macbeth has not been able to close this gap back up to Goodway after locking up at the top of the hill. Oh, he's dropped a wheel there off track, so he's definitely pushing as hard as he can. Goodway just being super consistent right now, keeping that gap to about 8/10 right now.
Okay, 13 to go. And there we go. Just the point I was going to make. Flores comes to the pits. He's going to also be joined by Brett Thurman, who is behind him on track. So Tremblay, Palacio, Revito all continue. I see Pisano in, one of the BMWs, taking his scheduled service.
Wow, and what's interesting about this is that a lot of these drivers are ones that were stuck behind other drivers that were slowing them up earlier. So this is the undercut that I was expecting, especially from Flores. So it's going to depend on how much fuel he puts in and how good his outlap is, whether this is going to work. A very short stop for Flores, 7.86 seconds. That's not much fuel, Joe.
Certainly not. And it's going to be tight margins on who gets that one right. We've seen the fuel decide the races before. Let's see if Goodway is willing to come in this time by. He finally warned Sean Macbeth out. This is probably the farthest back we've seen Sean this whole race.
I think Sean's getting a little bit desperate, Joe. Now, the question for Goodway and Macbeth is how much farther can they go on fuel? Do they have to come this time? Because if they can go longer, they should try, because if any of these drivers behind don't pit, that's going to mean they're stuck behind them. Goodway's going to go around for another lap.
But Macbeth is not. Macbeth coming in and maximizing that pit entry. We were talking about that before. He flew into there. And could that potentially make the difference?
Probably. I can't do that. I've tried multiple times, and I wreck every single time trying to take that much speed into the corner. But here comes Macbeth down pit lane. Should be pretty far up in the stalls, so this will give him a good opportunity to get a decent exit, but he's going to have a very interesting angle to exit back onto the track, and that might actually cost him a little bit of time.
Yeah, you can't really see around the pace car, which you can't see. It's just off screen. There it goes, which he obviously does not hit. You can ghost through that in the sim, but you're going out blind, and he finds the perfect spot. There is nobody around him. Clear track for the 252. Will this give him the pace that he's been needing? Revito next, who is yet to pit along with Goodway. Palacio also still waiting for him to come in. In fact, was Macbeth the only one to come in that time by? I think he was.
Well, now we have Lawson Christie, Barry Cochran, and Spencer Semkovich all in as well. They're about half a lap behind Macbeth, so Macbeth back out on track in 12th position. So things about to get interesting here for all the leaders.
Goodway's coming up to the pit entry. Does he respond?
No.
Oh, okay.
I think he's worried about getting caught up in traffic, Joe, because that could be something that happens to you if you pit early. You get into, Macbeth found a really good gap, but as we see Revito staying out, Palacio, though, he comes in.
Palacio bites, Tremblay does not. Williams is in. Menino is in. Starting to see more drivers attempt something.
Oh boy, Joe, I think Goodway might have made a miscalculation because he's catching up to lap traffic that's battling for position on this lap. So here's Palacio and Flores. We're going to see whether we're going to watch their pit lane times as we watch Goodway catch up to these back markers.
And Simkovich, who's part of it, is letting Lewis know that it's for position. He asked him if he's good for a bit. I think the answer is no. He's in a battle for the lead and trying to fight for his championship. Oh, pour off the corner. There's the holdup you were talking about. Simkovich with a slip up just ahead of Goodway, who gets to the inside. Simkovich sees it coming. He's going to let him through.
So Goodway is through. Sean Macbeth still running. He's just now coming up to the carousel himself. So let's see whether or not Goodway comes in this time, because he's getting held up behind these guys to the S's now.
This is going to be treacherous up to the pit lane. I don't think he can even go past this, to be honest. This is probably the farthest you'll see anybody stretch it. Also, just pushing the limit down into the pit entry. Goodway hits the cones. Revito follows him. Tremblay and Rines are the only other two yet to take fuel. Tremblay is going to be in. Rines is a ways back, so we won't find out about him for a while. Here is Sean Macbeth, and this is Goodway coming down to his pit stall at the very front. Macbeth is now coming to the hairpin. Goodway just hit his stall.
It's going to be tight, Joe. It's going to be very tight. I think Goodway's going to be able to drop off the jacks faster, but can Macbeth catch him on the exit? The answer is no. Goodway pretty decently away. I think it's going to hold about the same as it was before the pit stops.
Wow, that surprises me in a big way. I thought for sure Macbeth would at the very least be up next to him after how much Goodway got held up by the traffic. But like you said, 1.3 seconds between them at this point. Now that everybody is pitted, that resets the order, and Revito is into third. Flores was not able to jump him in the pit stops, but he's still awful close.
I mean, if I'm Flores, I've got some red mist going on because my pit strategy didn't work, and now I'm stuck behind this guy again. And so expect Flores to be a little bit more aggressive on this particular run when it comes to the late braking attempts, if he can catch up to the back of him. Remember, these guys, none of them took tires on these pit stops. So all of them running with these tires for the rest of the race. Only 7 minutes left, though. If Flores wants to make a move, he's got to make it now.
Taking a little bit of curb, and as they stay together, coming through the S's, we got a little bit of a train forming for 12th place as Flanagan, Rines, and Costello, along with Genet actually in there as well, trying to sort out the midfield.
Yeah, these guys have been together ever since those pit stops just finished. Christopher Rines just having completed his last lap. Remember, he came in from the 4th position provisionally on track, so he might pull away from these guys. But Costello has been, correction, that was David Flanagan who came in from the front of the field. So expect Tony Costello and Christopher Rines. They've been battling all race, just not quite this close. And now Genet right in this battle as well.
Yeah, almost to the bumper. Costello nearly pushing Rines around the corner. They complete yet another lap. These pit stops went very, very long here today, and so there's not much opportunity for the remaining circuits around the track to try and make overtakes. It is certainly the time to attack if you've got anything left in it.
Absolutely, all the drivers on track definitely trying to figure out how they're going to make passes here. I mean, our biggest movers have moved up 3 positions in this race, and that's J.R. Williams and Lawson Christie down in 19th position. Everyone else pretty much having held solid for this entire race. Nobody can really find a way by.
Looking at 3rd place once again, Dan Revito in the 84 only has to withstand this pressure for, what about 3 or 4 more laps? Oh, there was a car off.
That's Sean Macbeth!
Whoa! How did he get over there?
This was a self-spin. This is a self-spin. Oh, coming through 10.
And he clipped the curb. I think it's the inside curb. Let's watch. And then finds himself spinning into the inside wall again for the 2nd time. I almost never see cars hit that wall, and now we've had it twice. Yeah, there at the apex, you saw the bobble. And unfortunately, there was no saving it. That sends him down to 4th. Revito will lose fewer points, I should say, on the championship with this 2nd place. So he definitely has to fight for this off with Flores.
Absolutely, because he and Flores are 5th and 6th in the championship points. And granted, they're separated by about 32 points. So, but that being said, Revito, in his attempt to try and catch up there to the top guys, I mean, he's ahead of Morales. He's ahead of Morales. Now he's ahead of Sean as well. He's ahead of Palacio, J.R. Williams. He's gaining a lot of points this race. If he wants to maximize that, he needs to stay ahead of Flores.
Looking to see who's got our fastest lap, and I believe it is Lewis Goodway, the only driver to dip under 129 during the race itself. So that's 2 bonus points. I believe that'll be a 4 points difference between Revito and Goodway after this race. So that'll swing it to about 29 points difference between the pair of them. Not sure about what the other drivers will be. 29 points, though, is massive. A win plus bonus points. I believe the max you can get is 37 So that is essentially to the point that Revito would just have to hope that Goodway wrecks out early in the race.
Yeah, that's the only hope that Palacio would have in order to try and get this championship from Goodway. Palacio right now down in 7th position as he's trying to just hang on to this race himself, just starting from a not so great qualifying position has put him mired in the mid pack, and he really hasn't been able to catch up to Jean-Marc Tremblay up ahead to try and make a pass. We're taking a look at Palacio right now, 2nd in the championship. And I mean, Joe, it's such a short season. That 7 points that he gained in round 1 is really coming back to bite him, I think.
Let's go back to Flanagan in the 789 because he's in a fierce fight with Rines, who manages to get his nose inside but can't accelerate off of turn 4. Now the game is on, and behind them watching, here comes Costello. He sees an opportunity. He's going to take it. Don't need to ask him twice. Side by side, off of the long sweeper and down towards the hairpin, but he can't get the drive. He switches back, looking for the inside, absolutely sends it. Lick the stamp. Does it make it to the post? Not quite. Can't get it off the corner.
Fantastic defense from Rines, respectful defense from Rines, and good move from Costello to try and stuff it in there. That's the best opportunity he had. He also took away Rines' opportunity to try and pass Flanagan, so these two have fallen off back now off of Flanagan by about a second. Wow, that was some great racing from those two drivers for sure.
And Flanagan really needed that. He was under severe pressure. I think he was on the radio mentioning something about getting held up by lap traffic, and that's what kicked it all off. Now that he's found himself a little bit of space, it does look a little bit more calm for the 789 car. We're 2 to go. Our leader about halfway around.
Oh, Flores is around!
Oh, no. Did he make contact? No, this was another error. We said it at the top of the show. Trying to be mistake-free around these tracks is nigh on impossible.
He put the power down too early, crested over 3A, and ends up going off track. This is something that's so easy to do, something that you run into a lot the first times you practice this track, and something really hard to remember. He clips that inside curb. It sends him on a trajectory into the grass, and they can't get the braking down for the corner and ends up spinning off.
So this is good news for Palacio, promoting him up one more position. Good news for Macbeth as well, as that'll bump him back onto the podium. I don't know how Macbeth is still in 3rd, considering how hard he hit the wall. I would have thought his pace would be much lower on this one. There you see him on screen now. And white flag is out for Goodway. He's just taken it. So 1 to go for the man leading the championship, extending over all his rivals, not just with a win, but with a bonus point for pole and a bonus point for the fastest lap, currently at least. Can he also get a bonus for a clean race if he's less than 3 incidents? We'll have to watch after he crosses the checkers. And Flores is in the pits. Well, he didn't hit anything, did he?
No, not that I could see. Very interesting to see him in the pits. That's going to be insult to injury at this point. So as he pulls into the pit lane, yeah, this is going to knock him back towards the back end of this lap.
Maybe he cut it too tight on fuel. I mean, if you spin the car often and it's that close, it uses up those last few drops you need to sputter to the line. Meanwhile, this man is looking for win number 4 out of 9 races. Lewis Goodway took a while to get his 2nd one in, but once he did, it seemed like there is no stopping him. Down into the final hairpin, Lewis Goodway, yet making himself further unreachable by the rest of the fields. A win in California for Lewis Goodway here in round 9 of the PRL GT3 series.
Very consistent finish for him. Fantastic race to hold off Sean Macbeth for that long and force him into a mistake. Great job from Lewis today.
Back with Flanagan. He's been caught by Rines once more. Costello also hoping that he'll get another shot at this. Watching the pair of them. Rines not good off of turn 10. Look from way far back from Costello, and he actually gets up to him. I didn't think that was ever going to work, if I was honest. And Flanagan is going to be able to hold on to 11th ahead of this pair. Rines in 12th, Costello 13th. believe that is it for our battles on track as the last of the field. 21 drivers going to finish on the lead lap here today. So we'll take a quick break here on the Global Sim Racing channel. We'll come back with the unofficial results. And if you keep watching, you'll see the driver interviews. You won't want to miss those for this series. Welcome back to Sonoma. Round 9 made it very clear that hard to pass was indeed the story of the season, but it gave us some tense battles all race long. Lewis Goodway having to keep Sean Macbeth behind him, and in the end, it was Macbeth who decided to buckle instead. Ravito got second place to keep his hopes alive in the championship, but just barely. He was a distant 11 seconds. Macbeth recovered to third after hitting the wall hard in turn 10. You got Brett Thurman finishing in fourth today, up from sixth, and then one of our few drivers to be able to make 3 spots, Jean-Marc Tremblay, getting himself a top 5. Julio Palacio, another driver desperately hoping that this championship is not over, only gets 6. We'll have to do the math on the points to see exactly where that puts him. Jerry Williams was in 7th, up 4 spots actually for him, and Anthony Pisano in 8th spot. David Menino was 9th, and Diego Morales, after an early off, only collects himself up to 10th.
David Flanagan comes home in 11th position ahead of Christopher Rhines and Tony Costello. That hard-fought battle went on after the pit stops for the last 7 minutes of the race. And we have Arnaud Janot, who caught up to the back of that just for a moment, but then ended up falling back into the clutches of Brett Barrett, but was able to finish ahead of him for 14th. Brett Barrett in 15th. Kyle Stryker is a distant 16th after some early contact put him in the pits, with Jorge Flores finishing in 17th. Unfortunately, after his contact, his lack of contact, his off actually meant that he had to get some more fuel in that car. Kenny Rodriguez 18th, Lawson Christie in 19th, and Barry Cochran in 20th. And your last car on the lead lap, Spencer Semkovich in 21st.
Then from there, Neil Alexander 22nd and James LeBlanc 23rd, both a lap down. Cars who had major problems. Brian Hotham did manage to get to the finish, but was 10 laps down in 24th. Salazar in 25th. And Foes 13 laps down in 26th. I believe Raymond Day, the only DNF we had today. Looks like we've got our winner ready to talk to us, Lewis Goodway, here once again. Lewis, win number 4. You certainly had to hold off some hard chargers early on in the race, but it seems eventually you were able to make them fall away.
Sean was really fast, but I think he made a mistake, and then it was quite easy after that.
At any point during the race, especially since it looked like Sean had a few goes at you, did it enter into your mind that you've got a big lead in the championship and that you didn't necessarily need to fight Sean, or was this a win or nothing for you?
Well, I kind of wanted to win. I have a good drop score, so if I did crash, it wouldn't have been terrible.
That's a good point on that one. Yeah, 21 points sitting in your pocket just in case disaster did strike. But the good news is you did get the victory. You got the bonus for fastest lap. You got the bonus for the poll. Let's see what your incidents are. 1. Oh, so you have got a perfect score. You've done everything you need to do. What does that make you feel like heading into the finale at the Nürburgring?
Feels good. It feels good.
Understandable. Well, that puts you in possibly the best position you could ask for, fighting for the championship in the final round. Anybody you want to thank for this victory here today in California?
Everyone at SIMMSA, especially my team boss Peter, and you guys for the great broadcast. It's awesome.
Well, thank you very much. And that was Lewis Goodway, who helped bring us an exciting race today for his part on that. Says, looks like Dan Revito's here. Adam's going to talk to him about his second place.
Yeah, Dan, a great second place finish, but how hard was it to hold off Jorge Flores for so many laps before he made that mistake?
It was felt like the most undeserved podium. I think Diego certainly had pace on me at the beginning, and then as soon as I got a break from him, Jorge was right there, and he was on my bumper the whole way. So I'm feeling glad and lucky that I was able to stay ahead. But man, it was that was a tough one from the start.
Absolutely, and it seemed like it was challenging to pass everywhere on track, but you made some nice moves in defense against Flores as he made some nice moves to try and put you down. What was your strategy as far as trying to keep ahead of him?
I think the value of qualifying was huge here. I had the advantage of position on him in the race, so I knew I felt that if I could run some consistent high 29s and not make mistakes, I'd have a decent chance. But that didn't go as well as I thought. I ran quite a few low 30s and just tried not to make any mistakes to open the door, and fortunately was able to keep him behind me.
So a great finish for you today, and especially important ahead of your other championship rivals. How does this make you feel going into the final round of the Nürburgring?
It was everything today, right? I knew all I knew was I needed to be ahead of JR and ahead of Julio and have some kind of a chance going into the final round here. So pleased to keep those guys behind me, but I'm sure it's going to be a different story at the Nürburgring.
And is there anyone you want to thank for your second place finish today, Dan?
The guys at SRT eSports, a great group of guys to race with. We have fun every week in racing sim tools, Racebox, and of course you guys for putting this on. We enjoy getting together after the races and doing a watch party. So thank you to you guys as well for all you do.
Well, thank you, Dan, and hello to all the SRT eSports guys, and we look forward to seeing you next week. And it looks like Joe is talking to our third place driver, Sean McBeth.
Sean has watched this one slip through his fingers, but it's still the only other driver to have multiple wins this season. Sean, what happened at the end there? It looked like you were at least hassling Lewis for the win, but it didn't come to fruition.
Yeah, I just had a moment through that second to last corner. The car got loose going in, and I tried to catch it, but couldn't quite catch it enough and barely touched the grass, and it shot me to the inside wall. So that's just kind of the way the Audi is. I think the tires just tend to fall off, especially the rears. At least that's what was happening with me. So it made it a challenge, that's for sure.
We saw quite a few drifts from you throughout this race. We noticed that the car seemed to be pretty loose. Do you prefer a car to kind of handle a little on edge like that?
Yes, but I like it to be predictable also. And sometimes the Audi isn't quite like that. So you just got to sort of hang on for dear life and hope all goes best. But unfortunately, that didn't happen.
Well, you've got one more shot at this at the Nürburgring next week to claim victory number 3. How do you feel about that track? Is that another strong one for you?
I have mixed feelings about that place. I don't know. It's not one of my favorite tracks, but sometimes I do all right, sometimes I don't. So I'm kind of just going in. I mean, I know I'm not here for the championship really because I missed the last 2 rounds. So I'm just going to go in with high hopes and try and get the win. And that's it. That's the goal.
By the way, 10 out of 10 for the post-race performance there. We just saw you send it into the catch fence. But again, congratulations on a podium at the least today, and hopefully we'll talk to you in Germany.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, thanks for broadcasting this, and we'll see you guys then.
All right, so let's close it out with some thank yous to our sponsors. Of course, NinjaTrader. If you want to check them out, they are at NinjaTrader.com. And SimMSA, Simulation Motorsports Affinity, can be found at SimMSA.net. And then there's Butt Kicker. If you want to improve your rig, their stuff is at thebuttkicker.com. Thanks to the companies that provide the software and the hardware for our broadcasts. We listed them on our screen along with June Lalonde, who provides our music. Definitely go give a look at her Bandcamp where you can find more of her wonderful work. Thanks to the team today, Adam, Sean, and Dougie. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. And our social media includes Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global Sim Racing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. If you'd like to support us, our merchandise store is gsrc.storenvy.com. We've got a link in the description below where if you look nearby, if you haven't subscribed, make sure and click the subscribe button for our channel. The next race, the Nürburgring, don't worry, it's the GP course, not the big one. That'll be November 23rd, 9 p.m. Eastern, a week from now. We have upcoming races for other series listed on the screen, so check those out and mark them down on your calendar. Up next, real shortly, the Porsche Owners Club has the Charlotte Roval on tap at 10:45 p.m. Eastern. But until next time, race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.